So we start here the second part of our video, our JSP pages or Java Server Pages chapter. So I'll jump in the number 4. So if you remember, we have finished the first part by explaining how the scriptlets are Java code insertions within HTML files. Now we are going to see other concepts within JSPs, and I will start explaining what are the implicit objects. If you remember when we were discussing the servlets, some objects, and more specifically the requests and the response, are stored in the memory of the server, and they are accessed from the servlets because they come as parameters of the doGet and the doPost methods. However, inside the servlet, inside the JSP, I don't have such methods, which means Java Enterprise Editions is proposing to access these different components as implicit objects. So this concept of implicit objects, it is the possibility or how Java provides the access to many servlet capabilities within the JSP without being without the necessity of doing the stuff that we were doing in servlets. And then, so without having to declare them beforehand, as I explained. So these objects are declared, of course, and created by the container, and we provide the access of these components or these objects within directly or implicitly within the servlet. The access of these objects are done using 4 scopes, which means for how long these objects remain in the memory of the server, meaning the duration that I would be able to have access to these components. So either you can define that you would like to have your object alive within the memory as long as the application exists, or sometimes only for a specific request, so on. So we have 4 scopes here. It's not very necessary to understand all the details. You have here the definitions and the specifications, but just keep in mind for the moment that these objects don't remain the same period of time every time. It depends on the programmer and his or her needs. So we have different objects that are accessible from the JSP. We are going, as an example, are going to showcase only the request, and the other components are also exactly the same. So let's consider this example. As you can see, this is of course a JSP because we have HTML code and we have also scriptlets, right? So at the beginning, I have in the header only the title, but then in the body, I'm starting having a scriptlet, which, as you can see, starts with the call of the parameter first name. Okay, if you remember, this request, this object, was accessible in the servlet because it was part of the parameter of the method itself, while here I have no declaration of the doGet or the doPost. But because it is an implicit object, we can have access to it within a JSP. So you can directly, once you start working with your scriptlets, you can have access to this object. Okay, because this JSP plays 2 roles at the same time, the role of the sender and the receiver. So that's why we are we call the request parameter at the beginning. If we notice that the parameter is not null, then what we are going to do, we are going to simply display the content of this object that comes from the request, which is named first name. All right, and then we say hello, and we call the expression to call exactly what is inside name, the variable name, and we display another message. But then, if the name is null, this object is null, what does it mean? It means that I have not yet called, this is the first call of the GSP, and then I should display my form. So you can see that my form calls itself, since this one is called welcome.gsp with the method get. And then, as you can see, I have a text area or text field named first name, and I have another button. And you can see that throughout this code, I have the insertion either of HTML code or sometimes the insertion of scriptlets, because I need to call some Java code within this code. So I'm going to show you, this is the execution I have at the beginning. Because this one is empty, I call my form. Once I type something and I click on submit, I am able to show the content of this parameter. So here is the demo. Again, I have only GSPs. In the next chapter, I will show you how we would have, we will mix between the GSPs and the servlets. For the moment, I have no servlet. So this is my GSP. I no longer need this one. This is what I have explained in the slides. Now, if I call the GSP, of course, I should run it and not view it. At the beginning, it takes time. And then if I type anything, I click on submit, then I have the answer. So you can see through this example, the use of implicit object within GSPs. The next concept to discuss is what are called standard actions. We have different actions available in GSPs, but I'm going through the example of the action, the GSP action, the forward actually. I'm going to explain this concept. So what are they? As you can see here, these standard actions are specific tags in GSP which start with the prefix GSP and then another name. And of course, I have the opening and the ending tag. I'm sorry, I'm going back to use the full screen mode. What are these standard actions? They are predefined GSP tags, so this is the tags, but that encapsulates some functionality. If you remember, in HTML, I have specific tags that do some jobs that are already known for the display. But then if I need to have, when I specify some tags, I would like here to add some functionality when calling this tag. Okay, so these tags that are called standard actions that are that programmers of Java Enterprise Edition, they noticed that these tags are something very common, or these actions are very common. They propose to provide them to the programmer as specific tags. So they provide the access to common tasks that are performed within a GSP. So for example, if you would like to include the content from other resources, or you need to forward, if you remember, the forward is very much used in the context of Java Enterprise Edition applications, that if you want to forward, you need to use this GSP action. Or if you need to interact with some Java objects, are going to Java objects are called Java beans. I will explain this concept also later on. Okay, so you have different standard actions, but I'm going to focus in my current example with the forward and the parameter that will be used within the forward, and later on I will use this use bin if you want to manipulate within your JSP a specific Java object. So my example here focuses on the forward and the parameter or the param action. Here is our example. So as if you remember, as we did with the previous example, we start with calling the get parameter first name. If it is not null, we do something, but then if it is null, let's start with if it is null, I'm going to display a form to the client that will cause this page, okay? And I have the first name and I have a submit. But then when I click on it, what happens? Which means that if I click on it, next time the request.get parameter first name won't be null. So my object name will have some value, and then the name won't be null, and then I will go inside the if. If you can see, when I go inside the if, I am calling or forwarding the control of my execution to another page, which is called forward2.jsp, but to which I add another parameter. I say to my second page that I am sending you a new parameter in addition, of course, to the first name. I'm sending you a new parameter, which I name dates, and the value of this date parameter is this one. Okay, so you can see that we have a mix between GSP tags and the Java code. And then, I'm sorry, yeah, so this is, of course, I should explain, of course, the forward2.jsp, which contains this time. It calls, of course, since it is a GSP, it is able to have access to the request as an implicit object. I am able to call the first name because it was forwarded from the first one. But at the same time, as you can see, here we say that hello, blah, 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 your request was received and forwarded at a specific time. What is this time? Is request.get parameter date, if you remember. So we simply say hello, blah, 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 your request was received and forwarded at a specific date. So you can see here, thanks to the implicit object request and thanks to the forward sorry, where is it? Yeah, thanks to the forward and param specific tags, we are able to execute this program. So again, here is the demo. So as you can see, I have a first page, which in this case, it is called index, and which forwards to another page, which is called forward. Okay, so I start executing from this one. If I type something here, I submit, and then I have the answer. All right, now, if I go back to my slides, and to end this presentation, I'm going to explain the last concept, which is important within the context of JSP, which is how to have access to Java objects within a GSP. So in this case, what we do, of course, I should specify, for example, the name of the class that I would like to import, that I would like to manipulate. So I call the import using the annotation page, okay? And then I'm going to use the get attribute with the name of my object. And of course, as explained before, I'm going to use also the use bin action. So if you see here, if I specify that I'm going to use this class, and I'm going to, if I would like to identify this class within my program, I'm going to use this ID. Then if I use gsp.getProperty, it's like with the name person, this one, and the property is called name. It's like in Java, I'm using person.getName. Okay, so person.getName, we are able within GSP, we can access to it using these two specific actions. Okay, suppose I have this example in which I type the whole name of someone, I click submit, and then at the same time it gives me back the whole name, but at the same time it gives me the address of this person, because I create a person, an object called person, and then I divide it into a personal name and family name. Okay, so here is the explanation. So first of all, what I do, I create a class that I called person, in which I have personal name and family name. I have a constructor, and then I have the getter and the setters. Okay, then I have my first GSP. You can see here that I'm importing two classes. The first one, utilities, because I'm going to use a, I don't remember something. I will see it later, but I think it's a list. I don't remember. Anyway, and of course, I need to import com.email.person, which is the class or the object I would like to manipulate. So if you see here, I start with so first of all, we start by creating or declaring a person object of type person, which is declared in the import. I start by getting the parameter name, and in case this parameter is null, so at the beginning, at the first call, I will display the form which will call itself at the beginning, and simply ask for the name parameter as a text value. So when I click on the submit, so then the name parameter has a value, and in the next call, this variable won't be null. In this case, if you remember, I supposed to type the whole name containing both the family and personal name. So I check for the placement of the blank within this one, and then I extract the personal name and I extract the family name. I use these two variables to create the new person by calling the constructor, and then this object is set as a new attribute in the request. And then I forward the whole attribute, I forward the control to another GSP, which is called use object. And at the same time, I give it another parameter, which is named the typed person, with the value this object itself. Okay, so when I go to this use object.gsp, I first of all extract or recover the name, the first one to be typed, which contains both the first name and the family name. This is what I display. But at the same time, I get the parameter the typed person. This first one, this first statement actually display the address of the object within the memory, as you can see here. So it displays the address in the memory. Now, if I want to display either the personal or family name, I use the getters of this object. Of course, this expression, the whole expression could be replaced with the GSP param, what I explained before. So person.getName or person.getFullName or whatever, family name or personal name, could be replaced by declaring that we would like to use this object and then using the get property with either the property family name or personal name. Before discussing the exercises, I'm going to show you the execution of this program. So we do have the index and we do have the use object. Okay, so I start the execution from the index. It is compiled, converted, etc. And then I type. Takes time because we have the conversion and the compilation. I use, for example, this one. I type submit and I have the extraction of all the stuff. Now, if I go back to PowerPoint, and what I suggest is simply to implement all the demos. So the one that is called variable in GSP, what I have, which displays the scriptlets and expressions, the one containing the parameter, which explains the implicit object, the one that uses a forward from one GSP to another GSP, and we have explained this example to explain the action forward and param, and finally the use of Java objects. Thank you very much and see you in the next video.